Hello and welcome to the RA Group Beverage Special Webcast hosted by our Head of Wine and Service, Steph Robertson. Today we'll be learning all about gin and infusing gin at home. Super excited. Steph, over to you.
Thanks, Sonia. Hi, everyone. So today, as Sonia said, we're going to go through a little bit about gin. Now, I would say gin is typically maybe a summertime drink. That's what I would have said. But now, since the gin craze, I think we can call it an every time drink, really. So basically what gin is a clear spirit that's made by distilling fermented grain mash. Typically, it can be done through molasses and also grape must as well. But what they found is molasses tends to give it a real softness and a sweetness to the end spirit, which we don't want. Gin, we really want that super crisp and clean flavor. That goes super well with the tonic. So essentially, if we're being very technical about it, it's the base spirit is just a flavorless vodka, which is not, I don't think a lot of people really know that, to be honest. And then what's that flavorless spirit is then done is we redistill it with some botanicals to get that super gin flavor. And flavors can also be added after redistillation, depending on the style of your gin. Now, gin has a little bit of a fun history, if you will. It originates all the way back in Holland, and I found that the first mention of it was actually in 1269. Gin is pretty old.
Wow.
By the mid-17th century, it was popularized and used very much by the medical circles, typically by the Royal Navy, where it was mixed with lime to help treat scurvy on the long missions, and also with Angostura to settle the stomach of the sailors with seasickness, which, I mean, who would have known? Gin has medical properties, guys.
Perfect.
Also in the mid-17th century, it sort of arrived in England, and the English really sort of started taking notice when they were over in Holland, when they saw the troops over there. They were drinking out of their little hip flask with something like the juniper, something like that. And they were just really courageous and brave on the battlefield. So that's where the term Dutch courage actually comes from. And then we move on to the 1660s, where spirit prices really dropped way down low. And this was due to the Distilling Act, where you could kind of basically just distill whatever you wanted, when you wanted it. So in typically London, it was a very big thing. And then they also brought in these much heavier taxes on beer. So moving away from beer and into these spirits, and that really pushed the popularity of gin. And by around 40 years later, in 1720, we had what's called the first gin craze. This is where gin sort of really sort of exploded, and everybody was drinking it. And in London, with all of the waterborne diseases out there, it actually meant that gin was safer to drink than water itself, which obviously is great, but it also caused a lot of problems because people were drinking it in place of water. And that's where the name sort of Mother's Ruin came from, because there was just this complete disregard of society and slow collapse because everybody was super drunk all the time. And then, you know, after that, they did bring in an act called the Gin Act, where it could only be made by specific legal distillers to try and sort of curb a little bit of that gin craze, Mother's Ruin. Then on into the 1800s, when the British Empire really did start to expand out into the wider world, there was a much bigger threat of mosquitoes carrying malaria. And what was found is that quinine actually was a deterrent for mosquitoes. So carbonated drinks were just brought in and sort of just found, and yes, sort of can't think of the word, that's okay. So what they did was they took like the carbonated water, soda water, added quinine to it to make tonic water. But this didn't taste all that nice, and the gin was also a very harsh flavour. So what they would do is with their gin ration, they'd add the gin ration to their tonic water and quinine, add a little bit of lime to help with the scurvy once again, and the G&T was born. And that's why it's a real sort of British institution, I guess. Interesting history, right?
Very cool. Very, very cool.
And then we really jump into the 1920s when America went through Prohibition, and the speakeasies sort of started happening a little bit like around when the Gin Act was brought in. Everything sort of went underground, and cocktails came really, really big into fashion, because what they wanted to do was disguise the smell and taste of booze, essentially. So they created cocktails so that if police did raid one of the speakeasies, they couldn't detect that there was alcohol in any of the drinks. So obviously there was lots of stuff going on with the gin and different juices, and that's how cocktails, gin sort of started the little cocktail craze. Then in the 1960s, we really saw a massive serious cocktails come into fashion, you know, shaken, not stirred, with Prohibition definitely over by now, as we know. They really wanted some pure cocktails like martinis. So gin martinis really came into fashion. And then finally, 2011, we saw the second massive new gin craze, where gin has really boomed once again. Not quite in the same way as in the 1720s, do not worry. More around all the craft gins we have seen in and around all of the markets at the moment. So that's sort of a really quick history of gin. Sonia?
I just wanted to say, Steph, Dan has written in to say Steph is a gin genius, which I think is awesome.
Aw, thanks, Dan. That's really sweet. Caroline?
Steph, quick question from me. You've mentioned quite a lot of in different phases it's become a massive craze. Why do you think maybe, I feel like now everyone's go-to drink, like you said, summer, winter, is gin. Why do you think, is there any other reasons nowadays that it might be so well liked?
Well, I think it's down to sort of the restrictions around what a gin actually is, because legally the only law around a gin is that it has to have the forward flavour of juniper, so a juniper berry. And other than that, you can kind of do what you want. So I think the versatility is really what's driving, you know, everybody to drink it, because it really does have a sort of version for everyone, if you will. There are some distinct sort of different types of gin. The traditional one was London Dry. That's a sort of gin that sort of has come through history. That one is in the first redistillation. That's where all the botanicals sort of sit. In all the other gins, you can add flavour after distillation as well. So that's like the main difference if you are looking at the gins and how they are. A cool one is the Old Tom gin. I'm sure you've seen it on some bottles around the place. That one actually came in with the Gin Act. And that was the illegal type of gin, which was slightly sweeter than the normal London Dry. And it was actually sort of sold at speakeasies back then. And you knew that they sold it because there was a little black tomcat picked like little drawing in the window of the shop, which is very sweet.
Love it.
Yes.
Cute.
Any other questions at the moment?
All good from me.
Perfect. So I do have sort of 4 top sort of gins that I know of that I really, really do like, that you may find interesting, because they're not the sort of ones you find on the supermarket shelves. First one is Sipsmith, and that one is from Chiswick in London. And they actually distill everything. They make everything the whole way through. Then we've got Botanist. The Botanist is made up in Scotland. Pinkster gin is actually in the distillation process is with raspberries. That's where it gets its flavour from, and its lovely colour as well. And then Silent Pool just makes a really, really solid gin and tonic, I think.
Awesome.
Perfect. Well, I think it's probably time we move on to how you can make or distill your own gin, I should say, at home. Well, not really distill. It's more infusing if you're going to get really technical with it. So you do need a few things. Vodka, I'd say a 750ml bottle of vodka is a good one. You really don't want to use an expensive vodka. You want to sort of try and find the cheapest you can find. And you don't want it above 40%. So I just got this one here from Sainsbury's, sort of bottom shelf. It's 37.5%, which is actually perfect for a gin, because that's sort of the minimum amount of alcohol a gin can be. And then obviously we've got our lovely juniper berries, and you can actually buy these at Sainsbury's. So there you go, little juniper berries.
Very cool.
And this is what they look like. I've got them out. Let's have a little look. If you can see, nice. They almost look like little blueberries, don't they? But when you break them open and you actually sort of smell it, that is gin. That is the smell. Like it's crazy. It is so good. So those are the two things you absolutely definitely need to sort of infuse your own gin. Obviously we can't distill at home because you need copper distills, etc. So the easiest way I found is you just get a lovely kilner jar or something. Make sure you sterilize it before so that you can make your gin will last longer in there. And now I've only got a half bottle of gin, but I want to show you the full 750ml bottle. So I've just got some pre-poured vodka in my very classy jug, just there. And then my other half bottle. There we go. Wonderful. So when you are looking at infusing anything to do with alcohol, you want to add your dried sort of spices and herbs first, leave that, and then only add your fresh stuff in after. So what I've chosen to flavor my gin with today is, I can just about see.
Yeah.
Yes, perfect. So I've got the juniper berries here. I've got some little coriander seeds as well over here. This over here, some little cardamom pods. They're quite popular in gin. A cinnamon stick. Then we've got the lemon peel, some orange peel, and then I quite like the sort of the floral herb flavor of lavender and a little bit of rosemary as well, just to give it a little earthiness. I quite like that. But what you can do is go completely out the park, like I did for Christmas. I made Christmas gin. So you can see the color is very deep. So how I got that was I put in star anise, I put in cloves, I put in raspberries, all that kind of stuff. So it kind of smells like Christmas in a bottle.
Oh, I love that.
It makes such a good present because people don't expect it, like, oh, you made your own gin? How? That's incredible.
Love it.
So what we want to do is we want to add in all of our sort of dried goods now. So you want half a stick of your cinnamon. In it goes. Only 2 cardamoms. Cardamoms are very quite punchy in flavor. So I put in 2 personally, but like I said, you can play and do with how you want. That's the joy of doing your own, because you may like Hendrix, but not quite the cucumber. Am I right, Sonia?
Yeah, cucumber and gin for me just do not like each other at all.
Oh.
I always go for lime. You know what I'm like with lime. Could I use lime for this, Steph, instead?
Yes. So I wouldn't say the juice. I would say definitely just use the peel. For the best results, do peel it the day before and leave the peel for 24 hours and before you pop it in, because you do want it quite dry. You don't want any of the pith or any of the juice, because that'll taint your gin. Cool. Yes.
Steph, I've got a quick question. How many batches of that did you do to get it to like the perfect flavor profile? Because obviously you can make lots of mistakes, right? But then. Yes. I've
made quite a few batches, I'm not gonna lie. It's all trial and error, right? Even with cooking. I'm not the biggest gin drinker myself, but my husband loves it, so that's.
He's passed out next door, is he?
Yeah, he's been my guinea pig.
I knew I had some The wrong employee.
Now, what you want to do is I've got all of those dry things. Oh, and peppercorns. Now, I couldn't open my pepper mill today to actually just get the peppercorns out. So I'm just going to do a couple of turns in there. Don't worry, you are going to sieve and strain your gin. So you will be able to get out all the little bits and bobs and get a real clear liquid in there as well. So what you want to do, simple as popping the lid back on, giving it a little swirl, and you want to leave that for 24 hours. Within the 24 hours, what you do want to do is give it a turn and keep sort of giving it a little turn here and there if you can. All right, I think we may have lost my picture. I will just double check on that. Guys, do you want to speak about gin amongst yourselves? Your favorite gin types? What are they? Oh,
you're back.
You're back.
Look at that. Saved by the bell, if it were. So what I was doing before that was you just want to put your lid on, leave it for 24 hours. But within that 24 hours, you do want to give it a little bit of a sort of turn around, really to mix in all of those lovely flavors as well. So pretend this has been left for 24 hours. There we go. I mean, I can already smell the juniper berries in that.
Steph just wanted to tell you that Mark has written in and said it looks incredible.
Oh, thank you, Mark. If anybody's got any other gin-related questions, don't be scared to send them through. So now that this has been in here for 24 hours and we've done a little shakety shake, we want to just add in our sort of fresh herbs and fruit. So I've just got my lovely lavender and my rosemary, which will go in. Also, if you get it from the garden, be sure to wash it. Wash your fresh herbs off because you don't want any bugs in there. I mean, extra protein and all, but not very nice. And then your lovely little, I quite like a citrusy gin, so I always put in quite a few peels. But once again, it is very, very much down to your own personal taste.
Steph, is there anything that you wouldn't use that maybe might disintegrate that you'd discourage people from putting in?
Raspberries do work quite well, but you do need to watch them because they do tend to swell quite a lot, and you will want to strain them. Because with this, now I will leave this another for, I'd say 48 hours because I didn't leave it for the first 24. But what you want to do is taste it before you drain it to make sure that you've got the correct flavor profile you want. And at that point, if you've got any fresh fruit in there, you would really want to take that fresh fruit out.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you'd get a bit of a cloudy. I can see here I do have a little bit of sediment at the bottom of this one.
Mm-hmm.
Steph, with the drier ingredients, could you leave those to infuse for a long time? So could you make a batch and kind of a batch now and then it'd be ready for Christmas, or is there
yeah, so if you want to make more of an infuse, I guess like a liqueur, in a very loose sense of terms, where it's quite a strong flavor, where you would drink it by itself over ice potentially, yes, definitely.
Nice.
But once again, just be mindful of your fresh fruits. But if it is like the star anise, the cloves, the peppers, the junipers, you know, just leave them in there. It's like sloe gin. Just whack in the sloe berries and leave it.
Perfect.
We've got another question here, Steph. Sarah's just written in to ask, what are the best gin-based cocktails for summer, would you say?
Ooh. I mean, I think we're a little biased, Sonia, but I would say our raspberry and peppermint infused gin.
That one is really good.
Oh, it's so good. So it's like a raspberry white lady, really, but we've infused it with loose leaf peppermint tea. And we're using the Whitley Nell raspberry gin, which is actually very tasty. I was surprised.
Yeah, really nice. We're going to be showcasing that next week, aren't we? Next Thursday.
Yes, so that'll be our cocktail for next week's Shake Along on Instagram Live on the RA account. So Sarah, look out for that one because that's a good one. I mean, even for summertime, even just a gin and tonic, to be honest, play with your different garnishes, because I know some people like to put basil and strawberries in, or basil and peppercorns, and all of that is super cool. So really do have a play to your flavor profiles that you like.
Steph, just a basic gin and tonic. I always get told off by my mother that I put too much gin in and not enough tonic. So how do I get the right balance measurements between the gin and the tonic? What would you advise? So
sort of the perfect serve, if you will, right?
Measure.
Yes, well, I think perfect serves my way, but anyway, yeah.
Fair enough. I would say, you know, a double shot of gin, so 50 mils in your little top measure, or what did Tommy call it? A jigger. That's the bartender's word. It was a jigger. And then those little bottles of tonic water, I think the Fever Tree, they come in 200 ml bottles. Right. So lots of ice, your double shot, and the 200 mils, and that should be that sort of perfect serve. When you do put them in the big bowls, you don't want to fill it right up to the top. It's like wine. You only want to fill it to the widest part of the glass.
Good tip. Thank you.
No worries.
We have another question here from Daniel that says, what does navy proof gin mean?
Okay, navy proof gin. So all gins have that sort of base of 37.5% ABV, so alcohol by volume, whereas navy strength is 57% ABV. So it is a lot stronger. It's a lot punchier. It's still got that juniper-forward flavour, as all gins do, but yes, it's a super strength one.
Could you still use that then to infuse?
Yes, you could. To infuse, so what you would do with, if you're infusing a gin, you wouldn't need any of the junipers or, you know, the cardamoms, the coriander pods. If you're infusing a gin that's already been distilled and not a vodka like we have today, then you can just go wild and infuse it with slow berries, or you can put raspberries in it, and, you know, or mint if you wanted, like we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gin is a very versatile creature, I would say, but treat her kindly because she does pack a bit of a punch.
Daniel has written back to after that navy proof gin question and said, gonna get me some more of that then.
As I said, be careful.
Steph, I've got a quick question about some of the fancier gin brands that are around now. So Sipsmith, they do batch distilling, don't they? Which is, what's the difference between what's a batch distill against a kind of normal distillation process? What does that mean?
So you can distill in sort of a continuous still as well, where it's continuously going through the process. A batch distill does mean that it has a start and a finish. And you might not be able to make as much as your continuous still. So when they sort of say batch distilled, it's a very controlled environment. They put in, so basically, like, this is my little batch infusion. So this is like very bespoke, you know, they can put it, it's almost like, I guess, a vintage, you know, somebody's going to watch this and comment and say that's not correct. It's almost like a vintage on a wine, I guess.
Run with it. Sounds good.
Yeah. Brilliant. If we have no more questions.
What's your favourite gin?
Yeah, there you go.
My favourite gin. I would say it's a toss-up between Pinkster gin, which is absolutely delicious, British made, and you can also buy really good. Because they make it with raspberries, and the raspberries that are left over, like the really boozy raspberries, they make those into jam, or so you can put them into like champagne or prosecco or into your gin.
I love that. That is so good. They do them on flights, don't they, Steph? When you're flying off somewhere and you can get the little jam portions.
Yeah.
So cheeky Pinkster gin with some jam. Excellent.
It's so good.
I'd
say they're one of, yeah. Sorry, Karen.
Also for barbecues in the summer, it's quite nice in jelly, which we sometimes do at our house. It's quite nice.
Yes.
Barbecue.
Good shout.
Yeah.
We've got another question just popped in from Dan again. He's asking, is vodka the best base spirit for this infusion?
Yes, I would say it is, because it is quite a neutral flavour profile. And once again, you do want that sort of grain fermented base spirit. So if you are going to get really technical about it, have a look at, you know, where the vodka's from, or where your clear base spirit's from, and what it's made with. Because like I said, with the molasses or the sugarcane based spirits, you do get that impression of softer, slightly sweeter style of end spirit, and you just want that crisp flavour for a gin. But you know, you can do that. Nobody says you can't.
Awesome.
Well, it's a Thursday, and it's #ThirstyThursday, so I think I might go make myself a gin and tonic.
I love that, Steph. Thank you so much. I just wanted to thank everyone for today. And just remind everyone that we will be doing our Thirsty Thursday, Steph, on Instagram Live. And as Steph mentioned earlier, we will have the raspberry gin recipe that Steph was talking about with the rare mint tea infusion. So we're really looking forward to that one. We'll be shaking you along every Thursday at 3:30 on Instagram Live. Make sure you follow @RA Food. And bear with us. That's all from us today, guys. Thanks again, Steph. I have learnt so much. We hope you'll join us on Tuesday at 3:30, where we will have a special with Dipna Anand, who'll be cooking some express chicken masala and pilau rice. Super exciting. She'll be taking over our webcast for us. Meanwhile, for more information about our programme of discussions, please go to RA Group's website, www.ragroup.co.uk/news to download the broadcast links. Meanwhile, if you've got any questions or suggestions about how you can get involved, email gavin.goody@ragroup.co.uk. Thanks for joining us today. Stay safe and well, all.